And so the way it's laid out, I've got like two sets of speakers, mic pre's, interfaces, the old Pro Tools and newer Pro Tools, um, tape machine, some synths, a mini drum set, 4 or 5 amps, and microphones everywhere, like
Mm.
a couple tube mics, a couple of ribbons, a
Mm.
couple of dynamics, a couple, small condensers
Mm.
that are kind of live all the time, and I have them, set to inputs in Pro Tools and kind of tweaked with a little compression and ready to have EQ so that I can move fast.
Welcome to Audio Technology Magazine's ISO Booth podcast, where we phone audio engineers and producers at home, and thanks to the pandemic lockdown, they answer.
Hey everybody, welcome to another Audio Technology ISO booth. With me today is Alain Johannes.
Hey.
Al,
Hello.
Al is, I guess, the guitar maestro. He's
So I've been told, apparently.
he's also on the line because he's got a new album out. Apart from the fact that he just loves talking to me,
I do.
The new album is called Hum, and it's a beautiful thing, Al. I loved listening to it. I got access to a pre-release yesterday, and it was a beautiful sort of 45 minutes of my life. One thing that I was thinking about when I was listening was it kind of reminds me of listening to a nice LP.
It's funny you would say that because that's exactly what I was imagining in my mind's eye as I was laying in bed, quite ill for a couple of months, hoping to get better and to get up. And I just kind of had built up, all this, the last year being a bit crap. I went through some depression and some health issues, and I went out on the road to try to heal myself. And coming back from Italy in mid-November, I had some kind of sickness that's very similar to how they describe COVID, but I don't know if I did. But whatever the thing, it was pretty bad. So I knew it was time to make the record. I had I got into the my room at my sister's where I had my mini version of my old studio with all my instruments and microphones everywhere. And all I had was a couple of bits, like the first song, Marooned Scream, has a Portuguese guitar arpeggio thingy. I had that from an Instagram improv, which is one like Sketchpad, improvising on Instagram, and the acoustic bit, the picking part for Hum. And literally, I just planned this as to literally compose and record an album in sequence as if it already existed at some point. So I knew it was going to be, I think it's like the total of the record is 30-some minutes, which is a perfect side A and side B. So yeah, exactly. I aim to make a vinyl, basically.
There's something about the production, the tonal quality that, I don't know, just has that lush production that makes me feel like it's on vinyl. I don't know. Does that ring true to you, or is there any observations about how you kind of directed or wanted to shape the overall tone of the album?
Yeah. I think it would have a lot to do with the even though the lyrics were literally written and the melodies were written as I was recording, and then as I had just to make the trusting that I would be able to tune into the muse, as it were, and to have this time machine in my mind where the album's already finished and I'm just kind of pulling from the future and making sure that it is so we don't switch parallel universe lines or whatever. I think I made it easy on myself by having a just kind of a vague idea of what the textures would be, knowing that most of the time it would be an acoustic instrument at the heart, whether it's cigar box guitar, Portuguese guitar, resonator, tricone resonator. The tuning is very Nick Drake-ish, Bert Jansch, DAD-GAD, DAD. So a lot of this, you basically have now, the songs are anchored on the acoustic part and the melody, and then the textures I wanted were very organic, like air, meaning like my harmonium, with the reeds. I've been using my fretless guitar with Ebo, which gives you this kind of cello-like or theremin-like kind of thing. I had that ready to go. Some Native American flutes, which are like drone flutes, which have three, one playable long. It's like three connected. So one is a drone in that key. That I didn't have a hurdy-gurdy, but I kept hearing it in the textures, like in Hollowed Bones and the last song finished. So I cheated by using a banjo with a bow.
Okay.
And tuned in, which is, it's about the same. It's kind of a bright, brash, mid-rangey, droney thing.
Yep.
I just bought a sarangi on Amazon, which is a beautiful Indian classical instrument, and I've been hacking away at that since November, and used that. And I think I just kind of like it was 12 days for the entire record. It's 10 songs, so I took a day off a couple of times, and I'd let the first song, the second song, as I went, say day 3 in the morning, I would have the 2 songs. I knew they were going to in sequence. That's how I was imagining it, and I would just kind of listen into the silence that was there after the first 2 songs were over, and imagine what would happen next. And kind of like using that kind of a weird, unusual. I guess it's a little bit unusual to just kind of manifest this thing that I was telling myself already existed. So, not to make it sound like some kind of weird metaphysical experience, but no. I definitely had the energy in place to be trusting and the momentum to make it happen. And knowing full well that I was leaving. I had the exact number of days, with a few in between to try to get it mastered, and then pack, and then come down here to Santiago for the beginning of the tour. Into lockdown, and all this energy in this record is like, I'm going to heal, I'm going to move forward, I'm going to internalize the past, and I'm going to go out into the world and lock myself in a room for 3 months.
Yeah, look, it's not funny, but it's just so bizarre, isn't it? That you should be stuck in a room in Chile. And
everybody's been stuck, it's crazy.
You've spent a lot of your life in studios, I'm guessing.
Yes.
So first question, where did you record this album, Hum?
Well, basically, since the mid 90s, we became autonomous, in the sense that I've always had access to recording equipment since I was a kid. Started playing really young. I was 4 years old, and already by my 8, 9 years old, I had a Tamberg quarter track machine, and then later I had a 4-track, then a Stevens 2-inch 16. Just a few mics and a couple pre's, and just because it was part of collecting instruments and everything that was part of manifesting music. I became really interested in. I never went to officially, it was just by experience and stuff. And then when Chris Cornell stayed with us at the house, Natasha was, she passed, obviously sparked the record I did, but he stayed with us in the mid 90s after Soundgarden stopped the first time, and he kind of invited the president of the label of A&M to hear our music, and he liked it and offered us a recording contract, and then we convinced him to let us have the money for that recording, for the album budget to buy equipment, which we didn't think he was going to agree to, but he actually did. And then next thing you know, we're buying some Neumanns and some Neves and some APIs, and we have this house that has all these amazing spaces, a 20s house with acoustic environments, a super dry room with all mirrors on the walls and carpet, really big open tall ceiling, like a salon type of thing. And so it just became this thing to always have a studio. So when after Natasha passed away and I got out of that house, which was in Los Angeles, so the rent was astronomical, and I moved in with my sister, I brought a little version of my studio. So this album was recorded in a rectangular room with about I would say maybe 400 instruments all around. Like obviously, some of them have to be small to fit into a space like that. And upstairs is my bedroom, so I had about 40, 50 guitars there. And so the way it's laid out, I've got like two sets of speakers, mic pre's, interfaces, the old Pro Tools and newer Pro Tools, tape machine, some synths, a mini drum set, 4 or 5 amps, and microphones everywhere, like a couple tube mics, a couple of ribbons, a couple of dynamics, a couple, small condensers that are kind of live all the time. And I have them, set to inputs in Pro Tools and kind of tweaked with a little compression and ready to have EQ so that I can move fast. So like, okay, Portuguese guitar. So here comes my, I've got like one setup where I've taped together an old Octava 219 and SE ribbon, and so they're phase coherent and they sound really good. Can push that towards the instrument and then make one of the room mics live, and so I can have a little depth, texture there. And so that's the way it went. It's just like literally was all around me, a DI line in case I wanted to, add some bass or a synth or things like that. So yeah, exactly.
Yeah, well, it certainly sounds lush. It's a rich sounding album.
Thank you.
So obviously, your decades of experience, you know what to trust, and I guess what works for you.
Yeah, it just that's why I kind of have it basically to minimize the time or remove the time worrying about the sound or trying to find the sound. I have a few options all around me ready to go, so that I don't lose the moment of like, if I'm creating a track and I'm at the point where it needs. And I'm playing it back, and I'm trying to just imagine what does it need, and suddenly the idea comes, and I decide it's this. The last thing I want is to make the time between that inspiration of searching for what that thing next over it is to be spent in trying to figure out which piece of gear to use and how to EQ it. Or just kind of go. In general, I want us to be dark, so I'll grab the ribbon. In general, I want us to be really close up. In general, I want a particular sound on the amplifier that is a little whatever. It needs string reverb and it needs tremolo. So I've got an amp that does that, and so and that's kind of like the way I've worked. Now, obviously, when I'm working, producing and going to other studios, it's a little bit different. But I try to always get there early and set up what might possibly happen, and then of course things might come up that suddenly they say, oh, you know what, we need a marimba, and I'm like, okay, well, wait a second, it's getting yeah, we better get some.
It was interesting just hearing you say about in general you want it dark and you want it close mic'd, and I guess can I get you to sort of elaborate that on a little more? Like, do you prefer to have a darker tone that if you do need to kind of breathe a little bit more life or HF into it, you can dial that in rather than the other way around?
Yeah, I think I look at microphones like kind of perceptual ears, or ears that have a certain attitude or listening a certain way, and so it's always to me at the first at the source. Whatever, it's very important for me what the source sounds like. So I'll make sure that I'm happy with what's happening in the room. And then after that, it's like if it needed to be really representative, exactly like that, more hyper realistic, I will use something that doesn't have as much color. But it's really nice to already have the part and the instrument already kind of married to what the sound and the mic pre to use, so it's a Neve would have more of that mid-range bite, and my friend Dave Raphael's Autac have a certain kind of like almost a Helios type quality. That's kind of almost comes up all simultaneously for me. And then whenever I get a new piece of gear, I love to kind of explore what it can do, and what the possibilities are. What if it's used wrong? What does it work sometimes? If it's pushed a certain way, does it work? And then I kind of like remember that as an experience that it becomes one of the options for my instinctive decision in the moment.
Sure.
It's kind of hard to describe, but you know what I mean. It's for me, like obviously having been produced and then being a producer. One of the things that was really frustrating in the early days, in the 80s and 90s of being produced and stuff and engineered, was how long it would take to get sounds when you were ready to go, or people would, they had the luxury of sitting there but 4 or 5 hours in snares. I'm like, okay, but what song is the snare wrapped inside so we know if this is even going to work, It's like, so I got out of the habit of, obviously it's really good to explore and search and to really, but I'm not that kind of I'm more of a vibe. They always say, oh, I'm more of a vibe guy, but I just wanted to just kind of capture something that's really in the moment and has power, the power of that,
Yeah. So is there any, without putting you on the spot too much, is there anything that you can recall where where some great results have come out of that vibe, as it were, rather than the more analytical kind of technical approach to studio recording, but sort of like having this room prepared well and then getting in and just letting rip and allowing the band vibe to produce, I guess, the output.
Yeah, I think quite a few times I was being conscious of this to set up a situation where, that moment when the band first sets up and then is excited to go, and instead of saying like, okay, that's cool, you guys are ready, dial in your sounds and let you like whatever, but we're gonna need another 8 hours before we're ready to record. I already just make sure that the second that starts to happen, I just hit record, and I've gotten quite a few results where we got an amazing first take or first look at a song that had all this power to it, and then if I had for some reason which did happen, like one mic crapped out or the power wasn't turned on or it was a little too distorted, you kind of make it work for the song and you can maybe try to fix things, but at the end of the day, the what was coming out of the speakers was music, and it was cool.
Yep.
So that's happened before, and like one time with Mark Lanigan, because I worked with so many of his albums, he asked me to just kind of react as he would point to me, where the chord change would come, and he we had the speakers were quite loud. And he wanted a pulse, so there was like a click track, and that's in the room on the playing loud into his microphone that he's holding like this, and I'm playing the guitar, and then that was just to kind of lay down what the arrangement would be.
Yep.
And then when we finished, he's like, "That's it, that's the vocal." I'm like, 1 second, please. And I'm listening to the vocal, and it's like, and he goes, it's like, "I'm the wolf, take. Dog, and so I thought, how am I gonna? And obviously, when you do the audio restoration and the kind of noise stuff, it's getting better. But
it's still artifacts.
What's gonna happen is that his voice, the texture of his voice, is gonna suffer to try to clean it up.
Yeah.
So I came up with this idea. It's like, okay, got to make this work. So basically, if I take a classical guitar and make it played aggressively with nails, that's kind of in the same frequency as this click, and I do this arpeggio the whole time, and kind of blend it in there. It might just camouflage the click, and that's exactly what happened.
Awesome.
It's so that's basically I don't know what that has to do with the question. But,
no, that's it's just a really cracking anecdote. Thank you. Did you mix the album Hum? Did you mix that, or did you send it off to me?
Yes. Yeah, I basically mixed it too. Meaning, like, the process was get up in the morning, compose and record the song, have a dinner break, mix the song, and put it away. I finished, so that was the entire thing. And like I said, I took a day off before songs 9 and 10, and then the next day or the 2 days after that, I think my friend Dave Collins, who's a brilliant mastering engineer, happened to have a cancellation, or he had time, so I rushed it off to him, and then I got it back, and it was perfect and beautiful, like he always manages to do. And then 2 days later, I was on a plane to come here. I even managed to film the video for him with my manager. Frank is a brilliant producer manager. Manages, Joe Barresi and Andrew Sheps and Nick Raskulevics. And anyway, we went to the woody area behind his house, and he filmed me playing the song.
It's beautiful. I saw that yesterday as well. It's a perfect complement to the song.
Thank you. I think it fits well too, and I just did one for the song Free as well here in lockdown. I couldn't get outside, but I managed to find a site where it has stock footage you can purchase of the desert, because I felt this would be perfect. And I kind of edited it to the song, and it worked out great. There's a lot of that, like, mysterious videos from lockdown stuff going on. It's my friend Alison Mosshart just did one for one of her songs, and it's kind of cool how it pushes you to have this can-do spirit or whatever. Screw it, we can do that. I can do this here. I've got my iPhone does 4K, and I've got Final Cut Pro or iMovie, and let's do this. I think. And
a bit of time on your hands.
And if it has a cool feeling, then people don't really care if it's in CinemaScope or whatever.
Yeah. With the just, can you describe some of insights into mixing guitars, especially I guess sort of how to do hard panning and how to get it sounding amazing?
I usually like one thing that's hard as a mixer is when now that we can have so many tracks, it's like I want to hear what you would like to hear from your guitar. Instead, you get two mics on and there's 3 amps and 2 mics plus the DI plus a reamp track. I'm like, okay, the possibilities between these tracks of how this guitar could sound. You know what I mean? So I mean, for me, I just love the tone to have a character. That's why I love using cheap stuff with expensive stuff, different kinds of, like sometimes like using you have an amazing Neve console, but everything is going through the Neve, so everything has a stamp, so which is naturally is gonna make it kind of it can sound vibey, but it's kind of gluing it in a way that I'd like to hear more separation. So I like to, if you listen to some of the recordings in the 70s, things had such a distinctive sound very often, and you can place them anywhere you want, and they don't fight with each other because everything has had this interlocking puzzle-like quality. I mean, I like to do parallel compression, and parallel distortion. So like I might send this, have the guitars in a stereo group, and then kind of have a very underneath kind of a lift from a distorted version, much more distorted version of it, even running it through a couple of fuzzes. And so if I would mute it, it would just suddenly feel like it's lost some of its weight or some of its kind of edge. So it's not so much like you're hearing it as an active thing, and obviously you can write it up and down and put more in, adding a little bit of a clean guitar if that's possible, that can put a point or a face to the sound. Sometimes putting a mic on acoustically to mic up electric guitar, so it has a little bit of that acousticness to it. I mean, there's so many different things. I love reinforcing. When I want things to really blow up, I will overdub the guitar part with a fuzz into a DI, so it has no amp at all. So it's sitting on the edge of the speaker, and it kind of like makes it very easy way to make the chorus get really wide if you have the left and right hand doubling the original part, or even rebroadcasting it or whatever. I mean, there's so many different things, and then also love the space behind the track. Things that are really subtle, like delays and reverbs. Not so much. It can even exist inside a heavy track that has a kind of a dry character overall. But just this way that to kind of make the whole thing open up behind, and you can see it, like you even have height and width on the sides. And I've experimented a little bit with stereo wideners, which is usually some kind of phase voodoo, and sometimes it scares me because you're sitting there so excited, you're like, this sounds huge and wide, and then you put it in mono, you're like, where'd the guitars go? Yeah. So it's good fun to experiment. That's one of the things I love about the whole post tape machine world and all this stuff existing in virtual form. A lot of these plugins, having worked with Neves and APIs and Studers, have starting to get it so it really feels like it's not exactly the same, but it's close enough that it feels like it's a version of it. It really does. It's exciting.
And you've got yourself a UA Apollo, did you say?
Yeah, I have an Apollo, and I have my old Pro Tools rig, which at the time was super duper expensive.
Yep.
We all have those. The heaviest paperweight in the universe. I have no, I'm kidding. No, I still use it because we still have all those old sessions. So if I want to put up Euphoria Morning or some of the old 11 stuff or things from the 2000s, I still have my four 192s and a G5 and 5 cards in there, or 4 cards, and you turn it on. I still have those old iLogs, and I turn it on, and all I got to do is every once in a while replace the battery, because the only thing that goes in and you can find them used for like $300 now and or less. And basically I've gotten so fast at getting a G5 and putting all the drives, swapping the drives and the RAM and the cards and the monitor card and the airport card. It's insane. Yeah, I mean,
so how many have you been through? That sounds like you kind of have to replace it every 5 years to sort of have this archive machine.
Yeah, I think the G5s I replace at the rate of one every 2 years now.
Wow.
But last time I bought 2, and but it's still good to have because, oh my God, one of the most frustrating ones was making a choice in the 90s to record using Sound Designer 2 files. And you really got to go through a big process to translate that into, you have the old version of, running a Mac OS 9 and the Tiger and translate it into a Pro Tools 9 session, and then make sure it's waves, and then you get to 10, and then you go, forget about it.
Sounds odd.
But it's still fun. It's still it still kind of does something. It's just good to have. Just so if I want, because you won't, I'm sure you're pretty aware that and it seems so crazy that people will call you in the middle of a tour 10 years after you did a record and say, "Can we have the stems for this? Would you really need them for the?" And you're like, "Oh my God!" So I've actually done that. I've gone back and done stems.
Yeah. And so does that mean that you've kind of bought into the Universal Audio universe, that's kind of the world you now exist in, as far as the processing of plugins and
yeah. I mean, because especially because I've been so mobile, going on tour all the time, moved out of the place, and then I'm kind of looking to maybe try to relocate at least temporarily, or one of the places somewhere in Europe, or I'm still kind of figuring it out. But the fact that I can have a powerful MacBook and an Apollo, and then I was eyeballing some of the new ones too with more inputs and outputs, and I use the optical, so I can have an ADAT converter, and I can use other pre's. It's really quite powerful. It's unbelievable. Like when I open up these big sessions and I hit play and it kind of plays and it's processing and I'm like, oh my God. Obviously, you got to deal with the latency things and then you kind of work around that here and there. But having the universal audio stuff, I just think it's really musical and and it works great. And I'm actually got a copy of Luna, which I can't wait to start messing with.
Yeah, right.
I like to make a recording entirely there to get used to it, you know.
Yeah, yeah. So why so attracted to Luna apart from it being, you know, again in the UA universe?
Well, I mean, I downloaded it and I bought a couple of the options, and I haven't had much, you know. I've been a little bit distracted, even though one would imagine that being on lockdown, I would just be going absolutely crazy, doing everything and recording all the time. And since I have my rig with me, a mini rig, and instruments, but the weird thing is I've actually been just kind of staring at the wall going, what the hell's happening? You know, but I hope to get out of that funk and get in there. I listened to some of the software instruments. I find them, you know, they sound really great, and I love. I haven't wrapped my head around completely, but I love how everything is kind of it's right there, accessible. Like there's gonna be once I get facile with it, it seems to me that it would be very easy to be smooth on it, and I think it sounds great. You know, having the possibility of the Neve summing and you know put the tape sound on everything already integrated in a way. So I'm really looking forward to exploring it deeper. I also want, like I said, I want to get the Apollo. I guess it's a ×6 or whatever the longer version one. You know, that it seems to be great. You know, yeah.
So can you, I'm not a guitar geek, but I know that many people watching this are. So what do you have in your room, and is there any way of busting anything out and showing us and talking us through your love affair with your...
Okay, well, let's see. I have, oops, hang on, let me turn on a little light here. What I have with me, I don't even know how to turn this thing around. How does one turn this around?
Should be a little kind of.
Okay, is there a thingy that says turn? Oh, that's I just took a photo of us. Okay, that's good to know. Okay, I just did this, and I see.
Cool.
Okay. Well, I might have to do it the other way. Hang on a second. Add people. Okay, I don't know how to do this. Okay, never mind. Let me turn more light.
This is perfect. I'm seeing exactly what we need to see. So.
Okay, wait a second. I did it. I don't know how I did it. Okay, okay, so this is my electric here. I'm gonna bring in the light. This is my fabulous AirBnB. So this is Dream Studio guitars, and it's my custom Bacara model, right? It's a very nice guitar. So that's what I have here all the time. Then this is a Marco Bartolozzo Parlor guitar, which has this amazingly very loud and bright. This is my cigar box, my Sigfiddle Madrugada mix, which is really cool because it's got it's tuned in fourths, you know, and in C. So, and of course I borrowed a violin, as you do, and a flute, because why not? And then there's a little amp that my friend here made for me, a very nice amp, and I've got my, you know, some Adam speakers, and then the little Alan Moshulsky, that's my actual real name. Johannes is my middle name. But Moshulsky and Schneider, you know, Natasha was Natasha Schneider, so Moshulsky and Schneider sounded much more like a law firm, so we decided not to use. Okay, how do I turn myself around now? I'm not confused.
I don't know. You have to try and remember which button you.
Oh, there we go. Okay, yeah.
That's really cool. Yeah. So you haven't given any ad hoc concerts outside your front balcony or anything?
I have not. I really should entertain it, and I have a couple of hats too. So just in case, you know, because it's I haven't been able to work, so maybe it'd be kind of a cool thing to do some basking. But it seems like now we're going to be locked down, so I don't know.
So, is there any? Can I just bring you around to maybe talking a little bit about preparing an album for a tour? Like, once you've recorded it, like, how do you switch on to get the tones and the sound you need for a gig versus the studio? Like, is it a totally different mindset for you?
Well, I mean, I'm always in the search for how to reproduce the sound in the room acoustically. You know, obviously, what you don't see very often live is people using condensers or good microphones to, you know, good meaning obviously there's good microphones, but you know what I mean. It's like it's not. There's the little built-in piezos and it's getting better and better. But I found this little thing called DI slash microphone impulse and emulator, which you train. It's called a tone dexter, and you train it by importing plugging in a mic and playing, and it analyzes the microphone, and then is listening to the sound of your, you know, built-in pickup, and then basically makes a version of that sound that's preset in there. So I did that with my cigar box guitar, my 12-string, and my this acoustic that you saw, with 3 different kinds of mics. So I have different players for different songs, and then basically you just plug directly in, and the XLR goes out to the house, and there's no microphone anymore because it's already been kind of modeled into your preset, and then you can blend between the modeled sound and the thing. So that is something that I love to have, and I just try to keep it simple on my acoustic stuff, which is just structure the set with the cigar box guitar songs, the 12-string acoustic songs, the 6-string acoustic songs, and then, you know, tune them on the fly, you know, telling a little story in between. I'm not as fast as Richard Thompson. You know, he goes, you know, okay, well, there we go. I'm also getting a little bit of that fear of like of the string popping. I don't know why. I get kind of traumatized when I was young, I suppose. You know, and then I also kind of run the DI, that's tone dexter. One of the outputs I run into a little, you know, mini pedal board or just a couple of effects into a guitar amp, so that just in case something goes wrong, not only is it nice to add like kind of a warm atmospheric texture to the acoustic by having an amp on stage, but also if something goes wrong, then I can still play. So, you know.
Sure. Yeah.
And in this case, I had to. Well, I was in the process of learning the record because I performed it immediately upon writing it, and that's the last time I played it. And since then, I have. But some of the songs I didn't write down what my tuning was or where the capo was, and it took me a second to go like, what is that? I can't. Why? Especially when you do, you know, fingerstyle cross picking, and you're in an alternate tuning. You're hearing notes, and it seemed like, you know, by the time you're doing a massive five fret spider stretch chord, it's probably not it, you know. If I go from a simple D major to like a spider, I was like, that's probably not the position that it was in.
So I've just called up the Tone Dexter on my browser. So you kind of ran through that pretty quickly. I just wonder, while I've got it on screen for people to see, whether you could.
Yeah, well, you know, it's got a adjustment. I mean, it's amazing because there's a few software versions that you can do for instruments more like mandolin, banjo, and then there's another one for upright bass. But I've seen people have used it for upright bass and violin and mandolin and banjo and anything like that, and literally it doesn't really matter how great your built-in pickup is. It does a pretty amazing job of you know, putting the ambience of the mic, and they've been getting better all the time. And so what happens is it kind of, you know, if you watch some of the videos and even some of the early ones, as it's training, as you're playing and it's training, you just kind of play for like a minute, you know, and it's listening. And then if you can experiment with the position of the microphone and all this other stuff, and different kinds of mics, because sometimes like a super duper mic might not be, like a SM88, like might be just as good as having like a 47, which might end up being too big of a sound if you're going for this, you know. but I found that the ability on some stages, if I blend in a little bit of the original pickup for a little bit of more in your faceness, it depends, but it's really quite lovely. And also, when you push the volume in your monitors or something, the threshold of feedback is the same as your pickup. If there is, there probably wouldn't be too much except for like the strings starting to sympathetically resonate. But it's not like that kind of volume you could never have on stage if you had a condenser or a really nice tube mic. So I find it to be really amazing and useful in this way.
Cool. That's a good tip. Yeah, awesome. And I guess we haven't really covered off your relationship to recording vocals and performing vocals thus far. But what's your philosophy when it comes to recording your vocals? I got used to for a long time to and with Lanigan too, we would just use like a handheld mic, because very often we were in the control room together, and that way we could just put headphones on, and it wasn't a big to do. Could work the mic like the KM105, the Neumann, which you could kind of sing into sideways. Don't need to have a clown nose or a pop filter. And it really, really beautiful. I use that for quite a bit, but lately I've been, trying different mics. Like I have a Soyuz bomblet or the Vanguard C12 clone. I like to usually, the most important part is hearing, is getting the right balance. To hear yourself well, not only for pitch, but so you can feel. Don't have to feel shy because your vocal's too loud. And I mean, this pretty basic things, but I getting the sound right in my headphones. That's why sometimes I wait to sing the vocal. I wait to sing the vocal until I'm really inspired by. It's almost like a kind of karaoke or something. Like I'm fronting this band. Here I am. It's really a big part of it, and it's a combination of sometimes trying a couple. I'll know pretty quickly if the microphone is not right for this song. My go-tos for my voice are like an SM7. Obviously, get our hands on a nice Neumann or Telefunken, but a handheld can be just great. A lot of people have used that. I quite like those early '90s Russian mics, the Octavas here, which were really inexpensive. I think that for recording vocals, especially when I work with other people and producing them, it's whatever feels comfortable for them. Some people like to hold a microphone in their hand. They feel like they're more like connected to the song, and especially if they're like performing. So it's more like performing. And they might feel shy that there's a massive, or two or three really, crazy expensive microphones. And some people like to be in the dark. Some, some people like to be able to look at you to kind of gauge whether you think that they think that you think that they're good, sounding great, or whatever it is. It just depends on the person, and you kind of have to kind of feel that and guess it and be right, because I mean, especially vocals. We all know that it's psychological. It's an intense thing. When you're an instrumentalist, you can hide behind your instrument a little bit. You can kind of turn down, or you can blame somebody else for the clam you just did, or whatever. When you're a singer, it's just extremely raw, and it's just you right there. Very exposed.
Very exposed.
With as far as the frivolous question goes, and you've done quite a few music videos in your time, what's the decision behind the choice of kind of showpiece microphones that go on there? Like, I think I saw one video of you guys. I think they must have been Telefunken handhelds or Heil sound. I'm not sure which, but Is there an aesthetic choice that needs to be made when you're doing music videos?
You mean what microphones to show
Yeah.
that are? I think that obviously I always like that kind of what they call the Elvis mic, but obviously it's not. Something that has a cool grill that you can kind of hold like this and sing into like a crooner. Yeah, I think yeah. Obviously, it's part of the visual aesthetic of it, just like what color the drums are and what kind of the guitar is and things like that. And then obviously it's nice to see if we're actually going for this and we're presenting it as it is, and then maybe it's nice to see the microphones you would actually use, that do stuff instead of someone just, I even like had a period. There was one crazy moment where there was this pressure when we were as a three-piece that there's got to be more motion. Well, Jack's playing drums, he's sitting down. Natasha's at the organ, she's not going anywhere. I'm the one that has to move around, and so I think I spent 2 gigs with one of those microphones that go like this, the wireless, the wireless one.
Ones, yeah.
Yeah, and then Natasha goes, "You just ran around. You just moved nervously left to right the entire show. I don't, it's not working." I felt so uncomfortable with not having an anchor,
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean that's completely off the subject. But
No.
but it is a microphone. It is a microphone.
Yeah. I guess to wind up, Al, I've often asked people what they've learned from the last 3 months of craziness, and whether, I guess, on a more frivolous sort of aspect, what new skill have you learned, and on a more deeper level, like what have you learned, I guess, about yourself and what you do.
Well, I think that this has kind of challenged us. That kind of like inner dialogue, that the negative inner dialogue, the self-doubt, all that stuff that's been, kind of gnawing away at us, a lot of us, all the time. We don't get a break from that in a quarantine situation. It becomes like very loud. And so you have to turn around and face it and realize what is happening. And I think that's been the interesting part, because I've succumbed under the weight of the negativity, looking around. Will it ever be the same? Are we ever going to be able to play live? Am I going to, catch it and die? And, and then plus, combined with that, a lot of the things that's happening in the world with, now the protests and inequality and already. Well, whatever. We're not going to get political about it, but there's stuff happening. Okay,
yes,
and things need to change, and this was a cool little break. I guess difficult. It's still going on, but we could see that nature was healing really quickly, and then kind of made me think like maybe we don't need to drive on the weekend, or maybe maybe I'll get a bicycle and forget the car, or little things like that.
Yep.
I think patience. Is something that it kind of goes hand in hand with trust. That just trust that it's going to be okay, and just kind of quieten acknowledge that the negative dialogue is in okay, there it is, it's happening. I'm talking to myself, telling myself I'm terrible and things going to go terribly wrong and this is never going to work and whatever, and then just kind of realize that that's kind of affecting you emotionally, and once you're aware of it, then you realize you can try to basically control it or tame it, or just know that it's there, or just kind of like, I guess I did some meditating years ago, and I still do sometimes, and then TM meditation especially, you just focus on the mantra, and then you let all the thoughts just kind of wash over you, and you don't turn it around and go into the thought and experience the emotional weight of that. The thought that is like a whole other thing that you're thinking about, and so just being patient with that, and there is a lot of time to practice right now, that's for sure, and patience. And so I think, I just find it fascinating how a small thing can be like, oh my God, ice cream, after you've been in lockdown and you didn't have ice cream for 2 weeks, like this is the best ice cream ever. it's just like you become really, really grateful, and you feel blessed for the little things that you might have passed before, because in other words, I think it can make us a little more humble. We're humbled
Yep.
by this, obviously.
Yep.
And also it kind of distills all the superfluous stuff to the point where you're like, I love my friends, I love my family, I miss my friends, I miss my family, I love music, I love doing this, and it just kind of like there's a real possibility for coming out better after this,
Yep.
Obviously, hopefully that everyone's going to be on the same page about that, because I've seen some people just like, fight nonstop, and they didn't realize they didn't really like each other, even though they've been married for 30 years. Because you never had to be locked in together. Anyway, but hopefully they'll work it out. I'm talking about specifically about my neighbors I had in the other place.
Right. Cool.
Yeah.
Hey, it's been a real delight to talk to you, and again, congratulations on your new album, Hum. It's
Thank
due
you.
out in about 4 weeks, I believe.
July 31st.
July 31st.
Yeah, July
there you go.
31st. Yeah.
So, just encourage everybody to have a listen, because it's it really is therapy in itself almost. It's a beautiful thing, and
Oh, thank you, man. I
so
appreciate that.
congratulations. And best of
you.
luck with hope you get out, and that the world returns some normality pretty soon, and you can
Yeah, for
escape.
all of us. Yeah,
Especially
for all of
you.
us.
You're
I
doing it tough over this.
Yeah.
I can tell. So
Yeah.
good luck.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.